I'm Stephanie Alworth. I'm City of Douglasville's Main Street Manager, and this is our quarterly Meals and Deals. This is one of the activities we put on with Main Street where we try to do some type of business information, and it just so happens that today we're going to be talking about opportunity zones because we were recently designated. I'm really excited to introduce Marcia Hampton, my boss, Community and Downtown Services Director. She will be giving the presentation today on the opportunity zones. Marcia has done the majority of the legwork for this, and it was a very long, arduous process. And she'll explain that process, and then she'll take some questions for you after she goes through her presentation. So feel free to get more food and enjoy the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Sorry I'm chomping, but I guess I feel like I'm with family, so I don't have to be all formal, because I think I know at least everybody in the room, most folks. For those who don't know me, my name, as Stephanie said, is Marcia Hampton. I'm the Community and Downtown Services Director with the city. And what that means is that I am, my department handles tourism, downtown development, anything community development related that applies to the city, such as housing, grants, a variety of things with the community, tourism, historic preservation, and then our downtown conference center. So I'm pretty certain even if you read the paper, you realize our department is fairly busy these days with a lot going on. And as Stephanie said, this has been a very long process. To be honest with you, I didn't know going into it that it would have been as long as it was, but I do understand after I was done submitting all the information for the application, why cities actually hire a consultant to do this rather than do this on staff. Staff time while their staff are doing other activities, because it was a lot of information that you have to provide. The Opportunity Zone designation is tied directly into the urban redevelopment law through the state of Georgia, and it's tied directly into the slum and blight designation that the federal government ties to a variety of things such as HUD funding and a long list of things. And for those folks who are familiar with HUD, our Community Development Block Grant, all of that has that same slum and blight designation. The purpose of that is to have communities eligible for some type of funding that would provide for the redevelopment of those areas that may or may not get some type of redevelopment just by a developer coming in. So the state, federal, and local government have tried to provide some type of incentives for folks to come in and to do this type of development. Specifically, opportunity zones are targeted heavily for commercial. When we talk about this is primarily for commercial. This does not apply to residential, even though there is a residential portion that is in a significant amount of residential that's in the Opportunity Zone tax credit. I'll tell you why we have included that and what that means, but specifically the benefit that is direct tied to Opportunity Zones are specific for businesses. Just to tell you a little bit about the information that I had to supply to the state in order to get this designation, it was directly tied to building permits. They wanted to know questions as far as how many building permits were applied for in the Opportunity Zone designated area as opposed to the city as a whole. So what I had to do was show that actually building permits were actually down. So being down was a good thing. That gave us more incentive to be eligible for this type of designation. Also, business license. We had to show that new business license establishments in this area was down as compared to any other area in the city. And that was actually the case. Pretty much, on the one hand, it was very good because most of the businesses stayed stable. There wasn't a lot of loss of business except for those businesses that are directly tied to the housing industry and to the banking industry. Everything else pretty much kind of stayed the same after 2009 moving forward. But in other areas, such as the Chapel Hill areas and the tributary areas and some of those places along, actually they took a serious hit, and they are continuing to take a hit because they are directly tied to things such as retail and other type of businesses that are opening. Whereas this area, a benefit for those who are looking, it's actually fairly stable, but it's stable with no growth, which is not good. Whereas the other areas in the community, you're seeing a spike in new business license applications. In this area, there is not. There are very few, if any. The other I had to take a look at was code enforcement activity. How many code enforcement violations were cited in that area? I had to take a look at things such as any type of code enforcement violation, whether it was cut grass, whether it was abandoned property, a variety of things. And the more code enforcement offenses, the better, which is actually not good, but the better. Also, I had to take a look at crime statistics without getting into the numbers to tell you what our crime statistics are, because if I told you, you'd probably wouldn't want to be recorded to say what it is, because it's on a per capita basis for every 1,000 people, and it seems very high because Douglasville, the population is only 29,000, or I should say a little over 30,000 now with the new census. I didn't want to state that number only because it really only makes sense to say that per 1,000 when you're dealing with cities as large as Atlanta, and it makes ours look a bit high. But in this area, as compared to other areas in the city, there were more police incidents than in any other area in Douglasville. And then finally, one of the last things I had to provide information was on building permits. How many new building permits were issued in this area as compared to other areas in the city? And I did this information back all the way, gathered this information back on an annual basis all the way back to 2007. And I can tell you, outside of residential, there's almost no commercial in this area, and that continues to be the case. And it remains steady, which is not good, whereas in other areas the spike was commercial and residential, which of course residential is down, but commercial is continuing to rise in other areas in the city. So with that being said, there's a lot of work to be done in this area. The area includes, if you're looking at the map, and I'm sorry I don't have a smaller map for you, and I meant to print that out to give that for you in the packet, but we'll have those. We can actually have those before you leave today. It includes all the way south to Interstate 20 on Fairburn Road, and it follows that area, and it's pretty much only 1 to 2 parcels deep on each side, covers the entire downtown area till you get to Whitley Garner. It goes all the way to I guess that's Young Refinery, goes north to Maroney Mill, and these subdivisions over on that side to the north, and then it covers the area on the industrial area over on Bankhead Highway, Gurley Road, that area. And what that means is that from this point moving forward to October of 2021, and it's hard to even say 21. So 10 years, the city of Douglasville in this area will be designated an opportunity zone. Any business that will expand 2 or more employees or relocate that has 2 or more employees will be eligible for a $3,500 payroll tax credit. So that's what we're going to talk about today, specifically what that means for those businesses who are in that area who are to relocate. You have 2 different documents. You have the one that's a standard brochure that DCA gives out. This is what Stephanie is going to be handing out in the office to any business, to any of you who are interested in applying for this, and anybody that you know who's interested in applying for this. We do have, I know, at least one accountant in the room. I will tell you, for anybody who is interested, I would definitely talk to an accountant. This is not, and I want to preface it, not an easy process that you can go through and sit down and do the application on your own. Even Stephanie and I will need a little bit of assistance doing the application. There are not many cities out that actually have this program, but it is a lot of paperwork. But in the end, the return for 7 years is a huge benefit. So I want to preface that from the beginning to state that. We won't recommend a specific accountant, but we will tell you that it would be of a benefit to have one on board when you start this process. Now we'll go to the PowerPoint, and I'm sorry it printed out kind of crazy. But we'll start off on the page that says Opportunity Zones General Strategy. That covers a little bit of what I said initially about the Opportunity Zone tax designation and what it means, talking about local government using it for redevelopment statutes and revitalizing blighted commercial, industrial, and adjoining residential areas. And I'll talk to you a little bit about the residential portion a little bit later. And then it says rewarding local governments and businesses that undertake such revitalization with access to the maximum, as Stephanie said, state job tax credit. It's operated statewide, and it's where eligible, where pockets of poverty and redevelopment are needed. You know, some people may not like the term poverty. They may not like that designation, but I think if it means just holding that designation for a little bit to tap into the resources that are benefited from that, I think that it's worth it. It supports bottom-up, locally driven initiatives through local collaborations and partnerships. So this is an opportunity for us to, if especially smaller businesses, if you're looking to expand, looking for an opportunity to help your bottom line, this is a huge benefit. If you go to the page that says, once again, Opportunity Zone requirements, and it starts off, it says Opportunity Zones are eligible pursuant. This just tells you the code section in the state, so if anybody is interested in looking that up. It also tells you that DCA allows to designate an opportunity zone areas are adjacent to, and we had to do this for census block groups. That's why this map is made out this way. There were many more census block groups that were eligible in Douglas County. You may think that's a bad thing because of the 15% or greater poverty rate. The problem was when you sit down and you do the nuts and bolts of the application and you start divvying up building permits, code enforcement, and all of that, the total package has to equal. It can't just be that you have the 15% or greater poverty rate. I will tell you that the county is actually applying for an opportunity zone designation, I think, for areas near Thornton Road and on Bankhead Highway. I'm fairly certain they're probably looking at industrial property to the west and to the east. So I focused on this area because, of course, downtown being the first to think about, I think that's very important. Fairman Road, which will be the new Bankhead Highway corridor, when that road is widened, I looked at that as being second, mainly because I felt as though here's an opportunity. The road is going to widen. It's probably one of the oldest interchanges in Douglasville, and here's an opportunity that we can fix up that entrance into Douglasville. And third, and not that the north side was the least, but the north side will have a tiered type of approach, mainly because it contains the most residential. So whereas the majority of this is all commercial, the north side contains residential, so we will have to do a tiered step process as far as redevelopment when we look at the north side area because of the residential. When you go over to the next page that talks about local redevelopment tools, once again, it recognizes what the Georgia Code section is, and it tells you that it provides cities and counties the power to rehabilitate and conserve and redevelopment blighted areas again. We did adopt that resolution finding that the area was blighted and it was in need of redevelopment. And from that, we also had to establish an urban redevelopment agency that developed processes and procedures and recommendations for the city council to adopt and ways to attack what we felt like was redevelopment. That urban redevelopment agency, Mr. Davis, is one of those folks. He's walking out of the room. He serves on that agency. They were appointed by the city council. Judge Barbara Caldwell is on that agency as well. Jack Tyser, who's the chairman of the Development Authority, is also chairman of the Urban Redevelopment Agency. We have Charles Clark, who's a downtown business owner, Barry Oliver, who serves on the Downtown Development Authority, Mr. James Swilley, who lives in the county, and the mayor, who is an appointed elected official who serves on that board, on that agency as well. The primary reason that agency exists is to make recommendations and suggestions for the city council to adopt different programs and actions for the staff and the elected officials to take when it comes to redeveloping the entire urban redevelopment area. And this was one of the first things that they recommended. So this is one of the first things that we've accomplished. The, let's see, page number 5, incentives. We talk about incentives, and this is what I talked about earlier. It says any business within the area qualified, not bound by a business enterprise. This is this area, the one that's highlighted around in the blue, is eligible. The lower job creation threshold, you only have to create 2 jobs, and you will qualify for the state maximum job tax credit of $3,500. It allows credit against 100% of your income tax liability, with excess credit available to claim against payroll withholdings. If you go to the following page, it breaks down what an example of that would look like. Shows you year 1 if you create the 2 jobs, 0 tax liability, but where you get the benefit is when you go to year 2, you create that 1 job. Now you're at 3 jobs, and you have the $7,000 for the 2 jobs that you've created, $3,500 for each. You get your $1,200 in your withholdings, your $5,800 you have your $5,800. And if you go down to the bottom, you can follow the years of the job tax credit, the tax liabilities, and the withholdings. And then the final bottom line, and the above example, a job tax credit of $87,500 was generated with the business being able to utilize all of the credit. And they're showing you this because over the long term, especially for small businesses, that's a huge sum of money, and that's money that they can realize annually. So I think all of you who are business owners who are in here realize what this benefit would mean. And when you start looking at these numbers, especially most of you who are business owners, whether you do your booking yourself or your bookkeeping yourself, or you have an accountant that you utilize, when you sit down and you talk with them, they will show you what that means on your bottom line. Stephanie and I are here to help. This is one of the first tools that we want to utilize and to take advantage of and spread the word about that we have. We're one of few in the state, and actually currently we are the largest in the state. When I talked about the residential area and what we plan on doing, as you know, when I say the north side, I'm dividing it by the Norfolk Southern, the railroad tracks. There is a mix of commercial and residential on Strickland Street. Some of those eventually may or may not turn to commercial, but if they do, prime opportunity to utilize for anybody who were to redevelop those areas. If you look at 92 North, there is commercial property all along the road. There is huge opportunity for anybody who wish to develop. And the benefit for that is, whether you do the chicken or the egg first, the commercial or the residential, the benefit is that if there is a bonus or there is an incentive for the commercial development to come, that is a huge advantage for those who live in that residential area to now take advantage of prosperous commercial businesses. And then the next step approach for us would be to look at some of those HUD funding, such as CDBG, and any variety, to provide for those homeowners who are looking to rehab their property. That's going to be the next step for me to take advantage of for residential. But for right now, that was our commercial piece. I will tell you, it took me 9 months to pull this application together. So I don't intend to take 9 months on the next one, but it was a significant amount of time, considering that we're looking at over 2,200 parcels. And I had to provide documentation for every 2,200 parcels that are included in this area, so it took me some time. But I think it's a huge advantage that we have that many cities don't have, especially being that this is the largest. And so all of those 9 months that it took me to do this, it was well worth it. And I hope that you guys see it as a benefit as well. And anybody has questions, Stephanie?
I also just wanted to mention that along with the Opportunity Zone tax credit, the Opportunity Zone also falls within the downtown development service area. So there's also other incentives that would qualify for business redevelopment and business relocation. And that's something you can always come to our office and talk to us about as well. So this is just an addition to some of the other incentives that we already have for some of the properties in this area.
If you're a downtown business, if you are a person looking to or have an idea about what type of business you want, honestly, if you have your business plan in order, if you have your finances in order, you are at a huge advantage financially to have a business in the downtown area for several reasons. One, you can have, you have a marketing staff. You have me and Stephanie. The city employs us to essentially do that. I mean, that's what our job does. That's part of the Main Street program. That's something that's extended to you without having to do that, especially for small businesses. The second, you are eligible for low interest loans. A combination of a variety of programs that can get you up to $750,000. Some of these loans, one of the 250 is a green program that's at 2%. DCA is offering $250,000 at 2%. The Georgia Municipal Association is offering their $250,000 loan program at 3%. Those are currently available. There are grants available through the Downtown Development Authority to rehab the exterior of the building at up to $3,000. And there is also, for anybody who's looking for, because now that we are an urban redevelopment area, there's $500,000 in community development block grant money that's available to a business that would be willing to consider to partner with the local government on a project. And that's actually no match. And that's grant money. That's no match. Yes.
Today your meeting is just an overview. I hear you're giving a lot of specific specific opportunities and things that are available. After this meeting, how will business owners be able to take advantage of meeting with you and Stephanie one-on-one, or just kind of really getting down to the nitty-gritty?
All of this stuff is always available on the website. Stephanie and I's information is always available on the website. I know Stephanie puts out a quarterly newsletter, so I recommend that you guys sign up on the email list to make certain that you take advantage of that. We always try to focus on some type of project, some type of new development, to even give you examples of what folks have done, whether it be that they have just rehabbed a space and they used their own money and they tapped into loans that they had, or that they came and took advantage of some of the funding that we have. Now, I will tell you, many of these loan programs, not excluding this, the credit is very much so going to be an issue. And it's not an issue as, am I challenged if I can go into a bank and if I can't get funding? It's more so an issue of your credit has to be in order. Second, you have to have a solid business plan for any of these loan programs to work. That's one of the things. And actually, I would say, and Stephanie, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but DCA looks more heavily on the business plan than they actually look at the credit.
Yeah, and I'm always available to do a business plan review if you just want a second opinion or before we send anything off. I'll even help you with the paperwork on your loan process. Happy to do that at any time.
Yeah, and you can always stop in to us. Go ahead. Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
You can always stop in. You can email us. I'll bring some cards back over after I'm done. You can call me anytime. I'm always accessible. Stephanie's always accessible. And schedule a meeting, sit down. We'll come to your office. And honestly, and if you have an idea, I actually had a meeting with someone the other day, and they were asking me, what are your best business thoughts and practices? I said, well, you have an idea, you sit on it for about 6 months. You talk to people about it. And then you come back after 6 months, after you've talked to a couple people, and you think about it, is it still a real good idea? And even at that point, you have to have your business plan in order. You have to have your finances in order. And if it still makes sense to you, massage it a little bit more. Then later on at the end of the year, if it really makes sense, you've gotten your finances and your business plan in order, and you're set and you're solid on it, and you know this is going to work, then that works. Stephanie and I can be a part of that process. A lot of times people come in with ideas and suggestions for us. No, we are not geniuses, because sometimes people have come in and they've said ideas to us and we're kind of like, but that person has had the backing and the support that have made that idea work. But I would say often than not, usually they come in, leases signed, agreements made, no zoning checked, and no plan in order. And we are usually the last step, which is unfortunate for a lot of people. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Just a couple of questions. When you say the credit, you're talking about personal and their business credit, or just their business credit?
Payroll tax
So
credit.
it doesn't matter if they've had a foreclosure or they've had their car repossessed personally.
Yeah,
They're strictly looking at what their business credit is.
Yeah, this is what you're doing when you are putting in your payroll tax, for your employees, when you're doing your payroll taxes.
All right, so
Yes.
it's business credit. The other thing is, this applies also to existing businesses that are now within an opportunity zone.
That is correct, as long as they go over that 2 or more hires
So
when
they
they're
have
expanding.
to create, so they can be already existing with any number of employees, but they do have to create 2 new positions in order to get in on this.
And that is what's eligible for the credit. That's what they're eligible for,
Okay.
yes.
Is this retroactive at all to a company maybe that opened 4 months ago?
No.
It isn't. So it's starting
It's starting
at the date of
September, I have the date I don't have the date of, but it's like September
date
1st.
of approval.
Yes.
Right? Okay. And so then there is no kind of, is there any opportunity, let's say a local business went in, took a loan out to, build their business, to hire more people. Is there any opportunity in this for refinancing to lower an interest rate on an already existing loan?
No, this is
Because they're
straight.
now
This is a
opportunity
straight
zone?
tax credit from the government. This is it has
And how
nothing to
about
do with
the loans you
financing.
mentioned at the 2% and 3%?
The loans that I mentioned are straight bricks and mortar. They don't fund operations, and they don't fund refinancing. This is strictly for if you're going to purchase property, if you're going to upgrade your property, renovate. Like I said, bricks and mortar, no refinancing.
On the renovation part.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
2 questions. First, since I think this is awesome that this class is taking place, I would like to recommend, and I spoke to you a little earlier, everyone does not get the Sentinel. some people, work outside of their office and they don't get to look at their computer. I would recommend that you set up some type of texting,
Okay.
for those of us that can just get a quick text and a reminder.
Anybody who's interested in texting, if you leave us your number, we'll text you
Okay,
when we have something going on.
Okay. The other thing is, just getting back to, I'm glad that you mentioned that you and Stephanie are available. If you could provide like a checklist, like say if someone wants to apply for a grant, if there's a checklist of things that they need before they get to you, or maybe like a step 1 or step 2 or step 3, that would make it a whole lot easier, so that when they get to you, maybe you don't have to go through, you've got to have this, this, and this.
And we have that.
Is that on your
Yeah,
website?
that's on
Oh,
that's on the
good.
website. Yep,
Okay.
that's
All right.
part of I want to start a business packet.
Gotcha.
And it tells you from step 1 your idea. Yes, ma'am.
For the $500,000 in the federal grant money, are other businesses in the downtown area competing for that grant? Is it just ordered to one, or will multiple businesses be eligible?
It would be to one, but what I will tell you about that grant is you would have to convince city council members that your idea is very good.
Okay.
And that it's going to be, and your idea is very good. Your idea is going to generate a lot of jobs. It's going to rehab a blighted area, because essentially the city government will be applying for this on your behalf. Not saying that no one in here is eligible, but those are the folks that you will have to appeal to get that $500,000.
And then second question, if you're a startup and you don't have a business and you don't have business credit, and then do you just look to the business plan for the credibility, or how does that work?
Have you talked to SBA at all?
No,
Are you looking for loan financing?
maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the chamber has a good relationship with SBA in a variety of different locations. Sarah Ray is in here. If you get in touch with Sarah, they also have consultants that will sit down with you at no cost to talk about your idea, to talk about what type of other financing that's available for folks who are not necessarily in the downtown area. I'll use the pub as an example. Hopefully they don't get mad at me. But they originally came to us to apply for Georgia Downtown or Georgia Department of Community Affairs loan monies. They weren't approved. Reason why they weren't approved is because DCA was not convinced on their business plan. And that's when I tell you that sometimes certain things work, sometimes they don't. It just depends on who's reviewing. They actually went to SBA, and that's where they've gotten their loan funding. Some of the things that DCA looked at that they weren't necessarily convinced, a lot of it was tied into how they had structured their financing. And a critical piece was they don't own their property. And DCA felt like that was just a little bit too much of a risk for them to get involved in the loan because they could not collateralize the building. So therefore, they went to SBA. SBA didn't foresee it as being an issue. They had other property that they were able to utilize, and they have an SBA loan, and they've been successful for the last few years. So that just tells you that even though some of these loan programs may not work, there are other things out there, and it's about that whole communication and talking to people and getting the resources and talking out your ideas and knowing that if this idea is for you, then it could work. And I'll tell you something, if y'all tell Neil, I'll kill y'all. But just joking. He actually he had an idea to do a tea room in Roswell, and this is Neil Jenkins with the pub. And he had gone to DCA before, and I remember when I met with DCA, there was like, oh no, not that guy. He wants to do a tea room. And I said, well, no, he didn't talk to me about a tea room. But Neil had mentioned to me, he said that he just was convinced that he would be a good restaurateur. He just hadn't had his idea of what he needed to do. So that just goes to show you, it started out as a tea room, and now it's an Irish pub.